Overnight, we had no choice but to run. We could only take what we could carry, which meant we had to leave our dogs behind. Which was heartbreaking because we knew my father was lying. We knew they wouldn't survive without us. My mum told me that I'd get over it, but even months after we came here, that maddening guilt, that sickening feeling of betrayal, it never left me for a second. I don't think she understood how bad I felt until one night she'd come home after a long shift. She found me crying under the kitchen table because I didn't want to wake my father up. She followed the sobs, lifted up the tablecloth, and said, "Elsie, anak, anong ginagawa mo dyan?" "What on earth are you doing down there, Elsie?" And I said, "Well, I don't want to be here if my dogs can't be too." She said, "Oh my God, if you're that miserable, then why don't you volunteer at the local kennel? Maybe you weren't able to save your dogs, but maybe there are others out there that need your help too." So when I first spoke to the kennel lady on the phone, she sounded excited. She said, Sure, sweetheart. You can help out. Come down next Saturday." I remember on the day, it was absolutely pissing it down. It was cold, and I was just so knackered. I just wanted to go shut down and go to sleep. Then I thought, no, you've already made it. Don't be so miserable. So I strode up to that door, smiling like a Jehovah's Witness on payday. And I knocked with such confidence that I caught myself a fright. I was expecting the lady to let me in, but nobody was there, so I knocked again and again. But nobody answered, nobody came. I remember feeling a bit sick with embarrassment. I remember thinking how strange it must look if somebody were watching me now. Lonely, miserable 15-year-old girl, standing in the middle of nowhere, at a barn, in the rain. I looked like I was on the box of a very depressing tin of shortbread biscuits. Sure, I thought, okay, dream over, go home. So I start walking back to the bus stop. But as I start to walk, I hear a noise from inside the kennels. So I turn round. I see a man standing there, an older man, wearing a raincoat. He had a tennis ball in one hand and 2 brown Labradors scrambling by his feet to get outside. He had these dark, drooping bags under his eyes and sagging cheeks, like he was one of those wax models of a younger man, left accidentally by the fire. In fact, he was so slow and droopy that in my mind I nicknamed him the Bloodhound. So I shout to the Bloodhound. I say that the lady on the phone said I could start today. I was a volunteer, and he let me ramble. Didn't say a word. When I was done, he asked me, "How old are you?" I said I was 15. He just shook his head. He said, "No, you have to be 16 to volunteer. It's illegal to be 15 and volunteer in the UK, especially if you're around animals by yourself." Well, I was standing there on the verge of bursting into tears. I think he took mercy on me, so he said, "Don't worry. I won't tell if you won't tell." I know it's bad to have favorites, but my favorite was Rosie. Rosie was this tiny little puppy, this Jack Russell. She was always ill, and my poor baby had a tumor above one eye, and it was always getting worse. But Rosie was fearless, like she knew she was ill, but that never defined her. She had this mannerism about her that made her so sisterly. Like she'd sit right up in bed, and I'd be next to her cage, and I could tell her everything that was going on. It was like being in confession at church, where you've got that divider between the person and the priest, and the person just talks, and the priest just listens. So one day, actually on my 16th birthday, I came in, and as usual I put the kettle on for the Bloodhound. I like to think that at this point we'd become good friends. I didn't really get on well with people at school. I was a bit withdrawn and never felt like I really belonged. But with the Bloodhound, I think we developed at that point what you could call a healthy friendship. Or so I thought. It was his ritual in the mornings. 1 tea in the morning, and then a coffee when I came in at around 2. It's like a tradition. I loved making coffee. It was like being grown up. Sometimes I'd even take a little sip before I gave it to him. But that day, I made the coffee. I called out, "Coffee's ready," and no one answered, so I thought that was funny. I thought maybe it's strange, maybe, was he outside walking the dogs in the rain? So I walked into the kennel, and I saw him there standing at the back. He was making a sort of bed with pillows and blankets that we use for the dogs. When he notices me there, he starts to walk to me in a very strange way. Like his shadow weighed so much that it slowed him down. And when he gets to me, he puts his big, rough hands over my tiny, cold hands. And he takes the coffee mug off me. And he starts walking back to that bed that he's made. And he sits down. He said, "You're 16 today, aren't you?" I said, "Yes." And he pats the bed next to him. And before I can think of what it all means, I just start walking and I sit next to him. He smelled a lot like dust. Like he'd been lying on the floor for a really long time. The kennel had this dust from the concrete. It made the dog sneeze. It could stay in her clothes for ages after you left. He knew I felt something was wrong, so he leaned over me and put his arms behind my back, reaching out. I closed my eyes. I thought I was trying to take myself somewhere else, like I was taught to. I thought to myself, I remember this. I'd made a friend. I thought I'd made a friend, and now my friend was going to do this to me. But then I heard a tired, yelping noise, and I realized he's got Rosie in his hands. He'd taken her out of the cage behind me, and now he lay her on the bed between us. I remember she looked so weak and ill. Her tumor had got so much worse, and I'd only just noticed how bad it was. He takes my hand. He puts his coffee mug in my palm, and it gets warmer and warmer. And just before it starts to burn, he replaces it with a syringe in my hand. The syringe is freezing. But because my hand is so warm, it makes it okay. It's more or less numb. He asks me if I'm okay doing this. And I say yes. I don't want anyone else doing this. I want to be there for my sister, right until she goes. So he takes my hand and puts it on the spot on Rosie's body where the needle goes in. And he tells me to do a tiny prick, like, nothing intrusive. And so I look at her, and she looks at me. And she's wheezing, like she's in a lot of pain, but she can't even make any puppy noises because her body's too tired. So I take the needle in one hand and her paw in my other hand, and I look at my sister and I think to myself, I am so lucky. I am so very lucky to be able to help you end your pain and hold you in your last moments. The bloodhound steadies my arm and guides me to the spot. Together we push down on the plunger of the syringe. She doesn't even She doesn't yelp. She doesn't even move. She just goes still, closes her eyes. And I feel her paw go cold. And when I look at the bloodhound, there's tears streaming down his face. I have still never seen a man cry so much. Not even my father, who's seen more torment than anyone could ever believe. He doesn't even so much as croak his voice when he relives the past. But with this stranger, the bloodhound, we just sat there together, holding each other, crying. I kept saying, thank you, over and over again, because he did not give me a cruel job. He gave me a gift. The best birthday gift ever. He let me save my sister. He made me a stronger woman. A woman I'd want to be for the rest of my life. So, I guess that's why I'm trying this speed dating. Try to see if I can find a connection with a man. As strong as that moment I had with the bloodhound.
My cousin Dan was on his scooter once, and he ran right over this massive badger. I'd set you two up if you want.
Is he funny?
Yeah, in a way.
You know it's funny. That girl over there, Becky, she was quite funny.
But she knew she was funny, so it'd be an absolute nightmare.
True. If you're both funny, it throws the balance off.
I need to be the funny one.
Exactly. Otherwise, it just doesn't work.
Just competing the whole time.
I think meeting a partner that you can tolerate is just law of averages, really. I mean, you just keep searching. Eventually, you're going to find someone that's, wow, really okay, fine. She'll do, that type of thing. But half of it's just luck, yeah, and confidence, and I suppose desperation. So it's not just yourself walking around the Christmas market.
Oh, those elves just staring at you, patronising you, ironically making you feel this big.
Well, I like speed dating. I think it's a healthy challenge. It's great, condense yourself within 3 minutes and sell yourself, it makes you realise who you are. And if you're bored of who you are, you could just be someone else to the next person.
So when you got bored of being you, who were you?
Well, I was a Holocaust denier. No, it's funny, but I'm a data analyst. And last time I said that, it just killed the mood. So I just started saying I'm a Holocaust denier. And the conversation just flowed.
But out of everything you could have been, why specifically Holocaust denier?
Well, it's not just limited to the Holocaust. Any mass genocide, really.
And it really works.
Well, it stimulates a conversation. But sometimes the mood can go a bit sour. But I don't know why.
Mystery.
I had an interesting date once with a girl who was into dead bodies.
What? As in, like, proper dead bodies?
Well, I met her online. And we ended up going to this Jordanian kitchen place for our first date. And they don't serve booze there, so we're both totally sober, which is harrowing enough. And we're sitting there, and I guess it was the sensual wrist action of a salt and a chips, but something triggered off a more sexually directed conversation.
Go on.
I will. So, we're sitting there. She's having her chips. I'm trying to figure out how to hold my shawarma. Not an innuendo.
Oh, never ever get your knob out in a kebab shop, not even if it seems like the right thing to do at the time.
Amen.
Amen. Where was it? Oh, yeah. So, we're both sitting there, and then she asked me what I'm into. So I said, well, nothing that exciting, really. If someone's generous enough to be with me, then that's great. I suppose my fetish would be just being acknowledged.
Is acknowledgement a category of YouPorn?
Maybe right at the bottom.
I think you're right at the top.
Carry on.
Okay, yeah, so we're sitting there, and I said to her, quite vanilla, really, pretty boring. What are you into? And she said to me, well, I like dead people. So I said, what? You mean like they're actors? They're acting dead? Is the guy acting dead? How does that work? And she said, yeah, they're acting. So I said, are they? And she said, well, no, I don't know really. I think some of them are, but I'm not too sure. And then she takes a sip of a Rubicon and carries on eating. So I'm just sat there, looking just gormless, with this shawarma in my hand. And I keep thinking, this is the best date ever. Really? This is by far the best date ever. In the history of all my dates, I'm genuinely fascinated by everything she's been saying. I haven't been bored once, and I don't even need booze to fuel the conversation because it's already on fire and I'm getting third-degree burns just out of sheer agonising curiosity. And so I think, I'm going to have to ask her something. And so I do, and I just say, well, why? Why are you into that? How did you find that to begin with, And before she replies, she sort of, hesitates for a bit. I think she just realised this isn't classic first date conversation. And then suddenly the mood changes and gets all serious, and she just puts down a chip fork, stares right at me, and calmly says, Kyle, I like seeing dead girls getting fucked. Because I went to a really mean old girls' school, where all the girls used to constantly bully me. Now, when I see a dead girl getting fucked, I picture all of those girls that used to bully me as that dead girl who's getting fucked. And I'm the guy fucking them. And they don't know that because I'm fucking them. And they're dead. And then I come. And then she just dips a chip in some garlic mayo and carries on eating.
So what did you say to that?
I think I asked her something about a GCSE result.
You see it again?
We went out for a few months, yeah, but it sort of just fizzled out. Distance mostly. But after we broke up, I thought, hey, I'm single. This is great. And then all my friends around started to get married, so now I'm here.
Yeah, being with someone does have its pluses. But being single isn't bad necessarily. Kind of freeing, really. You get to do your own thing. No ties. No one to constantly send text messages to. And no one to argue with.
No one to come home to.
No one to sit under a blanket with and listen to the rain on the windows.
No one tell you to stop worrying about the ocean. It's real, with squid down there. Big as satellites. It's when you're on a plane and you're flying over the ocean. If you look down, these big dark blue patches. Ink blue patch. That's where they are. You just imagine one of them just grabbing hold of you, just when you're on holiday, trying to bloody relax. Jane, She used to put a wet flannel on my head. Just where the pressure points are, you know. She'd remind me that we're on the land. And the squid, the fish, they're in the sea. And that's the way it's gonna stay. So stop worrying, Paul. Just say, go to bed.
Well, this is a bit of a late one for me, so I better head off.
Yeah.
It's good to meet you all.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, I'll be off. Nice meeting you all. Much more fun than I expected.
Hey, listen, Elsie. How do you fancy going for a bite to eat? I know this great takeaway around the corner. Do these massive, massive tower burgers. It's like hash brown, patty, hash brown, egg, another hash brown, and some peri-peri salt on top. How's that grab you?
Maybe next week.
Next week?
I've got to go home. The dogs will be going crazy.
Yeah.
Sleep tight, Paul.
Don't live here, you know.
When you get home.
See you soon.